Looking back now, I can honestly say that one of the most important things I've ever learned in my life when it comes to training is documentation of training, recording training, training logs. I'll never forget that moment. I don't know why it kind of stuck in my head, but looking back now after 7 years of training, serious training, I keep thinking about this moment. And that moment is when I was reading that Mark Rippetoe book, Practical Programming, and one of the chapters, one of the sections of the book, he actually showed you how to document your sessions, your rep sets and whatnot, how to set up the page. And basically since then I've kind of tweaked how I write stuff down, and I've kind of added my own things over the last 7 years. But man, if you're not documenting, man, you are missing out. You're missing out on a lot of things. You're missing out on a lot of gains secondary to just understanding of what's happening with your body, with your programming. You can learn from the crappy periods. You can learn from the really good periods. You can look at the period before the good period to work out what led you to have a good period. That 16-day streak that I had of 200 kilos, hitting 200 kilos for one every single day for 16 days in a row, man. Like that period to me, man, like I go back to it quite frequently. And the way our memory works, man, our mind is so weird. Like I remember things in my life, and I think I remember them clearly, but our brain for some reason records emotional responses, how we felt in those moments much more clearly than true events. So when you're thinking about people that you've met in the past, you think about the good events, right? The good feelings or the bad feelings, but you don't actually understand like the intricacies of the events or the situations. So when I was looking back yesterday and the day before at my 2021 year, man, it's a very frustrating exercise. I'll tell you that. Because you start picking up patterns, recurring patterns that maybe your brain doesn't realize. These macro patterns, maybe, every quarter of a year, you start making the same silly mistakes with programming, with thinking. And without that documentation, you will never know. And so the risk is, if you don't write it down, you're going to be coming back to the same mistakes over and over again. And maybe eventually, just by pure, trial and error, your mind's going to catch on. But if you have some documents, if you have something to look at, something to remind yourselves, to trigger those memories, if you don't have something like that, then it gets really, really, really hard. Last year, as I said in yesterday's video, man, this is the number one frustrating thing to me, man. It's crazy. It's crazy for me to think about this, but it is what it is. Last year, so 2020, I ended the year with doing heaps of posterior chain stuff, RDLs specifically speaking. I ended that year by writing a review, a whole freaking page review, where I write, RDLs are making me feel fantastic. I need to do this next year. Part of that whole write-up was addressing anterior pelvic tilt. And part of that is the lower cross syndrome. You got the RDLs working on the glutes and the hamstrings, and then you've got also abs, which are also kind of need to get stronger to correct that lumbar lordosis, hyperlordosis posture that it is with anterior pelvic tilt. So I open up the year, not with RDLs, but I open up the year with ab work. And I run the ab work for like a couple of months, and then I get into some pain troubles, and then I'll develop another idea, and I completely forget about the whole RDL thing. So this year, I'm starting with the RDLs, and I'm going to read my summary for last year. This morning, I literally sat down. So yesterday's video, I made quick notes. Today, I literally wrote a whole page in my log, my training log, exactly my thoughts, exactly what I'm doing. I feel like I'm going to photocopy that damn page, and I'm going to put it on the door of my toilet. I'm going to put it at the freaking front door of my house. Every time I go to the door, I'm going to put it in the car. I'm going to stick it everywhere to get it through my thick brain that RDL's posterior chain, Ivan, makes you feel fantastic. When you address the pulling, the pushing becomes easier. When you address the pulling, you can tolerate more pushing. For whatever reason, you can run the freaking, theories in your mind until the cows come home. This is evidence according to your training log. This is not somebody writing some stuff down. This is you, your body, your leverages, your everything. This is just my program, my history of my human movement. So if you're listening to this, you're like, oh, damn, I'm doing RDLs. You might have different leverages. You might have a different weakness. You might have a different program. For me, who is squatting every day, doing a shit ton of pushing, because I squat every day, and the way I squat is mostly a push, I need to supplement the hell out of it with lots of pulling. But if you are squatting once a week, maybe RDLs don't need to be such a foremost, dominant exercise in your programming. This is all kind of wishy-washy, depending on this, that, the other. There's a lot of things, kind of moving parts in all of these discussions. This is why I'm saying to you, man, if I'm telling you, one of the biggest lessons I've freaking learned in my training years is to keep a training log. This is literally your historian. This is literally your documentary that you can refer back whenever you want. Whenever you get stuck, you can refer back to this. I remember Pavel Tsatsouline, he said it many times. I've read a number of his books. He said, when in doubt, train your grip and your core. That's what he said. Those are his experiences, right? And definitely, training your core is just fundamental to a human being. To me, that saying, if I was to write it for my own self, I would write, when in doubt, do posterior chain, do RDLs, do good mornings, do any pulling exercise, hip hinging exercise. I will just say, when in doubt, do RDLs. This is what I want to write. I'm going to get a freaking black spray paint and I'm going to do it all over the freaking house. Clearly, I'm not going to do that because my wife's going to kill me. But this is how much I feel when it comes to this. And it's so frustrating that year on, year out, I keep making the same damn silly mistakes. And I can kind of track back and I can see why that is. Pulling to me ain't fun, man. It's not fun. And for many, many times, for many videos, I've said, man, it's like hard work. I feel like I'm laboring in the field. It taxes the shit out of me. Oh my God, it's bad. Squatting feels amazing. I can tolerate a lot of squatting. And so what does my psyche tell me? What does the subconscious, that voice tell me? Just do some more squats, bro. This is what we love to do, man. You don't have to do all this hip hinging shit. Just do your squats. And I go crazy on the squats, end up in pain. I need to suck it up and I need to just do the damn RDLs. These RDLs are making me feel great. Today, what do you think I did? Walked straight into a RDL. Once again, I worked up to 5 sets of 5 at 200 kilos. I did the same thing 2 days ago. So what I'm doing is one heavy day, one light day, one heavy day, one light day. Now 2 heavy days in a row, I'm doing 200 for 5 sets of 5. That to me is impressive. It's impressive how much strength I'm gaining in such a short period of time. And because I've been doing that, 160 kilos on the squat today, I did 7 sets of 5. Once again, I don't know what it is, man. This is just the way I am. Every time I go crazy on the RDLs, I am able to do a shit ton of volume on the squats and my hip feels amazing. So the exercise that I did yesterday and the day before in terms of looking at the log, thoroughly looking at the log, like month by month, writing down on a piece of paper what was happening on that month, summarizing each month and then looking at the whole year and seeing what the monthly flavor was, you can see the chasing the tail kind of situation happening. And all of these things that I've said in the past, they're not all crap exercises. Bulgarian split squats, unilateral work, walking lunges. What else did I do? A whole host of other things. GHDs, back raises, all that. That's all great, and I definitely stand by what I said on those things. They all have really good effects on your body. But for me, top of that damn list is RDLs. It's also hypers, 45-degree hypers and back raises. But the way RDLs are unique to me is that you can load that easily. 200 kilos. I can't do 200 kilos. I can't mimic that effect on my body with a 45-degree hyper. I can't do it with a good morning. The good mornings for me feel like every single time I get under the bar and want to do a good morning, I think of Bruce Lee. If I overdo it in terms of range of motion, snap city. With the RDL, if I overdo it and I can't get it up, I just let go of my hands and voila, it's on the ground. So I feel like it's like a quick getaway if she hits the fan. So for me, out of all those things that I mentioned, RDLs on top of the list. They feel great. My back feels incredible. My traps are getting a workout. The erectors are getting a workout. My glutes right now, I'm sitting on them. They're all pumped and they're going to be sore probably. Hamstrings are getting a good stretch. And all of that kind of leads to a really nice mobility in the squat. And I feel really solid in the hole. My lower back is stable. There's no butt wink. It just all feels incredible. But this is all, like this realization, maybe the RDL would have left me if I never looked at the book, if I never did the review. Maybe I was like, I think I need to do more squats. When I looked at last year, man, and then I went back a little bit further and I saw what 2020 ended up like, I'm like, man, what are you doing? The only other thing that I can see in all of the training that I've done in basically the last 2 or 3 years, there's 3 things that pop into my head. There's these RDLs, which I'm so hot about right now, and I'm going to smash them like crazy. There's the pin squats. Now, the pin squats in my mind are like, please, pin squats. Please, pin squats. Like, how do I incorporate pin squats in all of this? This is what I'm thinking, but I'm so stubborn with the RDL idea that I don't want anything to get into the recovery points of my RDLs. The RDLs are the focus of my training right now. But the pin squats were phenomenal for many of their own reasons. And the other thing which has been phenomenal in all my training in the last 2 or 3 years has been high volume, basically sub 60, sub 50% work on the squats. The first time I hit 200 kilos, I did, like I said in yesterday's video, milk and squats program. And I was doing whole other, like I was basically running with that idea on steroids, basically. I was doing like sets of 50, sets of 60, sets of 70 with an empty bar. So that's taking the milk and squats on steroids. That milk and squats is up to 20. But this, I was just blowing them out of proportion because I was like, okay, so what's so special about milk and squats with 20 rep programs? The breathing squats. This is what they want you to do. Okay, well, let's breathe freaking for 10 minutes. So then I would load the bar up and do like crazy amount of, reps with just an empty bar. And surprisingly, that transferred over to healthy hips, lots of pump work, healthy back, and I was able to tolerate more squatting of the higher, the 140s, the 150s, and things of that nature. So high rep work made me feel really good, hit 200 for the first time. Pin squats made me feel really, really good, hit 210 for the first time. I can't forget those things. Those are very, very important points in my training. The RDLs are making me feel incredible. I can tolerate so much volume in the squats because of this. So, can you do all of them at once? No, I don't think you can. You could probably do them and, maybe favor one and then more than the other. Maybe you can use the pin squats like a fella said the other day in one of the comments. He said, you can do the pin squats, but tuck them at the end of the workout and just maybe do a lot less kind of volume and intensity and still get your pin squats for those effects. You can do that. But I've never done pin squats in that sense, like half-assing them. When I did pin squats, I varied the pins, in terms of the height of the safeties. Sometimes I did really, really high and I moved the freaking thing very, very short distance. And I think one day I loaded it up to 340 kilos. It was crushing the hell out of me, right? There was no range of motion in the hips or the knees. But I can tell you, man, if you've got 340 kilos on your shoulders, on the back rack, things are happening. Things are working out. It looks silly as hell. And, people will look at me in the gym like, look at this retard. What is he doing? Half repping this crap or quarter repping this stuff. And then they would see me do 200 kilos for one. And then they can see the color of their faces change. Oh, this guy can actually squat okay. He's just doing some weird stuff beforehand. So, racking 340, man, like there is no other core exercise in the world that will do those effects as you handling 340 on your back. Like I can't explain to you the contractions. I remember I was getting cramps in my lower abs. I was getting cramps in my lats. I remember one time, I don't know if I talked about this on the video, I was lowering the last rep of the pin squat, and as I was coming out, I pulled my lat. Like you pulled the lat. Like I wasn't doing a pull up or a row or whatever. The contractions were so severe that my lat just cramped up and kind of pulled. That's what happens with heavy weight. You can't mimic heavy weight. Ab rollouts, leg raises, that's all well and good, and I'm all for them. They're all great exercises. But you can't, like specificity, man, sheer weight on your back is something different. So pin squats do that. High rep work does another thing, and RDLs do another thing. So you can, I can look at my history and be like, Ivan, if you want to progress, pick one of the three. RDLs right now are so hot in my mind and they're making my hips feel incredible. Once again, if I didn't do the 5x5 at 200 kilos, I wouldn't be able to do 160 7 sets of 5 at 160 of squats. They go hand in hand with me. Tomorrow I'm going to come in again, have a really light session after all of this freaking volume that I did today. And I'm going to come in and do maybe like deficit RDLs with like maybe 100 kilos or like 60 kilos and just work the range of motion without the super load, but still go through the hip hinge in motion. It's making me feel incredible. The bottom line is, man, like if you are not keeping a track of your training, you're making a big mistake. do yourself a favor, man. Even if you have a coach and he's telling you what to do and what's up, still record your stuff. And maybe even from my own experience, like when I look back at the training log, I look at the little blurbs that I put, day 600, feeling really tired, but squats felt really good after doing this or that. Or sometimes I'll make comments, I've changed the arm positioning. I've gone much more narrower now. I've gone a little bit wider. I'm pointing the elbows back. I'm pointing the elbows straight down to the floor. I'm looking up. I'm looking down. These type of things are so valuable because numbers in themselves don't tell you the whole story. But if you write a little blurb, whenever something happens, anything could happen. Recently I've started putting what shift I'm on. So, some days I would look at the training log and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? I've had a week of no shitty training. And then I think to myself, oh, maybe I had a week of night shifts. But I didn't put that information in, and so I'm looking at this training period, and I'm like, why did I take my foot off the pedal there? And so those type of things are really important. Say if you went out last night, it's New Year's Eve, and you go hammered. You drank a freaking bottle of vodka, and you're hammered. And then you don't document that, but the following day your training session is like 1 set of 5 at 50%. You could probably work it out with the date, being the 1st of freaking January. You can work that one out. But, birthday events, these type of events, jot it down. There's a reason why I performed shit here. Or I fasted for 16 hours and this is what the session, ended up being. All of that information is so valuable when you're trying to draw conclusions, when you're trying to make sense of what's happening. And all of this, at the end of the day, man, all of this just seems like a whole bunch of chaos. This is kind of what I feel like the world is, what the universe is. It's a whole bunch of chaos. All these atoms are flying around trying to do whatever the hell they want. And we, as an intellectual mind, we're trying to make sense of all these things. And sure, science helps with that, and we're trying to group things together and trying to measure things and time things and work things out. That's the role of that logbook. You're trying to measure and you're trying to make sense. So if you're somebody that's serious about training and you've just ended up a whole year of training and you're sitting there having a beer at the end of the year and you're like, this year was a really good training, but I reckon this is what's happening. But you have no evidence for that. So it's you can't really make that argument. I remember Pavel Tsatsouline saying once, one of the interviews that was on, I think it was on Joe Rogan a few years ago, and the conversation kind of led them to talk about the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. And Pavel Tsatsouline said, the secrets to strength training, to powerlifting, Olympic weightlifting, all that stuff, the secrets have been discovered. We already know what you need to do to get stronger. And then Joe Rogan was like, so why isn't everyone doing if it's already been discovered? And Pavel said, because it's boring. It's boring. Maybe that's what drives us to change things up. The RDLs work every time. Posterior chain works every time. Why the hell do I change it? Because today I can't be screwed doing hip hinging again. I want to go for a lunge. It's a beautiful day out. That kind of stuff. Boring works. That's basically the lesson in all of this. Who can be asked doing boring stuff? This is where the professionals separate themselves from the hobbyists, I guess. But man, I'm not going to go away from this idea. I've had enough. One of your fellas also commented on yesterday's video and also the video before. And you also said to me that you have the same thing. For you, every single time you do, I think you said Bulgarian split squats, and every single time you do Romanian deadlifts, the best training periods of your life. I think you said the best training period of your life was that. Bulgarian split squats and Romanian deadlifts, and you moved away from it. And then when you heard me talk about how frustrated I freaking was with my crap, you were frustrated hearing that because then you reminded yourself of what you're doing. So sometimes, man, you just need freaking to remember what works. And after 7 years of writing these damn logbooks, I'm on to my second book now. I filled the whole one book. So yesterday I was kind of looking at that as well because this year was half that one, half this one. So I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, man, there's 7 years of information here, man. Surely after 7 years, you can draw some patterns in all of this chaos and work out, okay, when I do this, you can do this. So I feel like if I just sit down and study the hell out of all of this, study the squat, the deadlift, and all these things that I've done in my time, I can draw some patterns out of this. Okay, this works. So freaking do it. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.